Now. Jump. Jump.
Oh crap. Holy, what the heck?
Second wall if you don't already.
Second wall was down.
So this should be interesting. Holy shit! Hunter mains, we gotta have a little talk. Unfortunately, you were left at the kiddie pool when this episode's artifact was constructed. Titans have bugged Thunder Crash damage and 36 different flavors of Bullet Charge DPS for effortless damage. Warlocks have Sanguine and, well, basically any weapon they want for effortless damage. And Hunters, well, you have Queenbreaker and Golden Gun, and that's about it. So I decided to get a little creative for some massive DPS, but I won't lie to you, today's build definitely takes some effort. The star of today's build, believe it or not, will not actually be Still Hunt. Although it is part of the overall build, the main focus for today is going to be our heavy weapon, Heathen's Vengeance. This episode, the Vault of Glass weapons received an overhaul and became craftable weapons, and in doing so, Heathen's Vengeance received several new perk combinations, including perks like Overflow, Autoloading, Envious Arsenal, Bait and Switch, Bipod, and Elemental Honing. The main combination we'll be looking at today is going to be Envious Arsenal plus Elemental Honing, but I did want to mention that you could theoretically also run Bait and Switch instead and do just fine. However, like I mentioned earlier, I decided to get a little creative specifically with Elemental Honing. For those of you at home who do not know what Elemental Honing does, it is a brand new perk introduced in Episode Heresy, and it states the following. Dealing unique elemental damage grants this weapon a stacking damage bonus for an improved duration. The bonus is increased for kinetic weapons. Obviously, Heathen's is not kinetic, so we don't have to worry about that part. Essentially, what this means is the more unique elements you stack together, the higher your damage bonus becomes. So in a perfect world, we want to achieve hitting all 5 elements, those being Arc, Void, Solar, Stasis, and Strand. And if you do, we get a 35% damage buff, or a 40% buff if we were using a kinetic weapon like Praetor's Revenge. So the goal for this build is to establish ways for you to achieve this goal in an efficient way without severely crippling your loadout. For example, we don't want to have to rely on Combination Blow for our arc choice, as that would mean chasing an enemy down to melee them before a damage phase. Now you may have noticed that I have Still Hunt and Heathen's, which are 2 solar weapons. This is by choice so that we reap the benefits of Surge mods for both the weapons rather than having 2 different elements and only having one of them being boosted by the Surge mods. Well, that and the fact that Still Hunt has a tiny nuke built into it thanks to Celestial Nighthawk and Golden Gun, which is also solar. This means that the rest of our kit needs to land the other 4 elements, Arc, Void, Stasis, and Strand. So, with that, let's jump into the build. So here's our kit. Obviously, our super is going to be Golden Gun for Celestial Nighthawk and Still Hunt, so we're just going to go by that and go straight to abilities. The first thing I want to talk about is our dodge. Now, normally, and in most people's cases, you probably just want to go with the reload dodge, that being Marksman dodge. However, in this build, I have Acrobat's dodge, and it's for a couple of different reasons. Number 1, Radiant makes our Golden Gun stronger. 2, you might not be in a fire team with a Warlock that provides you a Well of Radiance or Radiant through Song of Flame. And 3, Radiant also procs Limit Break, which is a new artifact mod added to this episode in Act 2, which will also boost the damage of our Golden Gun. So basically, you always, no matter what, want to have Radiant in some form or another, and this dodge makes it happen. Plus, in this particular build, you never actually have to reload, and I'll explain that in a second, but let's go over the other abilities first. For our melee, we have Snare Bomb, which is pretty standard on Hunter builds, but in this particular case, it's doing 2 things. The first is the usual, which is it can weaken any enemy or boss that you throw it onto, and the second thing is going to be making it our Void element for Elemental Honing. For our grenade, this is where it gets a little bit tricky. So initially, I have Arc Bolt Grenade in here to provide our Arc element for Honing. However, you have a small bit of flexibility here where you can actually put Ascension into your aspect, which we're going to talk about next. And then if you do, and the boss is close enough for you to just simply activate Ascension, which will hit the boss and jolt them, give you an arc hit, you can then put Dustfield into your grenade instead for the usual weakening plus Dustfield slow combo in order to make your Facet of Courage live, which is going to be one of our fragments. So here is where you have the choice. You can either put Arc Bolt or you can put Dust Field. Up to you. Now, let's go to our aspects. As I already mentioned, one of them is going to be Ascension. This is an easy way to proc your arc damage as long as you're near the boss, or it's actually possible to get near them. For example, you don't want to get near the Corrupted Puppeteer, so in that case I would use Arc Bolt, but if you're doing something like Averick, for example, then I can just use Ascension on him, and I don't need to have Arc Bolt on. Our second aspect is going to be Winter Shroud, simply because this is a way to proc your stasis damage. You simply just dodge near an enemy before your damage phase starts, and you're fine. But again, it's situational where you would have to actually be near that enemy, and that's sometimes not possible. This would also be a good time to mention that you can front load the first few stacks of your elemental honing, as every time you add a new stack, the timer on it resets, meaning that you could preemptively try to stack your arc and your stasis at first, before a damage phase, and then as you're getting into the phase, you then activate a new element, like throwing your Snare Bomb for Void, and then that will reset the timer and increase your boost to that next level, all the way up to the 35% threshold. Back to the abilities though. We have our fragments, which we have 6 of thanks to having Ascension and Winter Shroud on, providing 3 each. So the first one is the one I mentioned earlier, Facet of Courage. This is to buff the damage of your Golden Gun. Since Facet of Courage gives you increased ability damage to Arc Solar or Void, if you have a Darkness debuff on an enemy, this is really easy to pull off extra damage for Golden Gun, since you can have things like Dust Field, or Winter Shroud, or simply just throwing your Prismatic Grenade, which then turns into Stasis, and obviously that's a Darkness debuff, so that also makes it live. Next is the staple to any Prismatic build, Facet of Protection. When you're surrounded by combatants, you are more resistant to incoming damage, so just extra DR, it's always nice to have. Number 3 is going to be Facet of Command. Facet of Command is here to potentially give you an extra rocket to throw in your rotation. So the ideal example for this is going to be you're in Prismatic and you're starting your DPS phase. You're throwing your Prismatic Grenade, which will then start freezing the boss. Technically they don't freeze, but it still counts for this. And then, as you're in your rotation and the boss is freezing, you can shoot 2 rockets with your Heasants, and then Command will proc, letting you shoot more rockets through that, and then you just continue with the rest of your regular rotation. So, an extra rocket's always nice to have, right? Number 4 is going to be Facet of Dawn, another form of making us radiant. Powered melee hits against targets makes you radiant. So when you throw your smoke bomb and then you make them weakened through the smoke bomb, you also make yourself radiant, which will then make your Golden Gun do the proper amount of damage. This also, again, would proc Limit Break on the artifact, which we'll get to in a second. Number 5 is going to be Facet of Ruin. This is strictly here just because we would end up shattering our enemy through our Prismatic Grenade, and this allows us to do more damage with that shatter, but I would not say this is mandatory, and if you want to swap this out for something else, you totally can. Lastly, we have Facet of Solitude. So this is kind of here from the previous Queenbreaker build. Essentially, as you're landing precision final blows, or just precision hits with Still Hunt, this allows you to sever the target, which means they would be doing less damage to you, which is great for survivability, but also this would count as a Darkness debuff on the enemy, allowing you to take advantage of Courage again. Real quick, let's talk about the artifact mods. There's 2 of them specifically to worry about for this build. They are the following. Legend Incarnate in the second row, which states weapons with the Time Lost Magazine Origin trait gain bonus damage. This basically just means any Vault of Glass weapon gains bonus damage. And then the second is going to be Limit Break, which states casting a super while you are critically wounded or you have an elemental buff matching your super element grants you a period of increased super damage. So most people think, oh, you have to be critically wounded to use this. Well, no. In my case, for this build, all you gotta do is become Radiant, which I just stated we have several ways of doing. So this gives you a free 30% extra damage buff to your super. Alright, let's talk about the loop a little bit. So for this build, what you would do is you start the damage phase and then you can throw your smoke and your nade, or just your nade, doesn't matter because you get your smoke back in Prismatic. After that, you can pop Still Hunt to get the timer started, then pop Prismatic to combo off and do a little animation cancel to save yourself a second or two. At that point, you can throw your Smoke and Nade once more, and then go into damage, because now your debuffs are live, your Darkness debuff is live, so you can do damage with Still Hunt, then your SMG, then you shoot your Golden Gun, because at this point, it will proc the timer on the Heathen's Vengeance for the Origin trait, giving you 20 seconds of increased damage, plus also 2 rocket shots from that proc. I should also clear up, the bonus damage is going to be from Limit Break, and the bonus ammo, 2 shots on your mag, will be from the Origin trait itself. And the reasoning for having Golden Gun in the middle of that rotation is because as soon as you pop it, you want to take advantage of that timer that Heathens allows you for 20 seconds. So you want to get out as many two-shot rockets as you possibly can. If you pop Golden Gun at the start of a damage phase, and then you have to go through Still Hunt, and your SMG, and your nade, and your smoke, and then go to Heathens, you're already wasting like 5+ seconds of your time, which means you're likely not going to get out all your rockets. Now for the weapon rotation itself on its own, it's a little different from how you used to do Still Hunt with Apex Predator, where you would just go Still Hunt, shoot, get your 6 shots, swap to Apex, shoot the rockets off, then go back to Still Hunt, the holster would proc your last shot, and then you would go into the big shot again. We're not using a recon or an auto-loading rocket in this case, and we're trying to utilize the origin trait, so in this case, you have to do things a little bit differently. What I ended up settling on was the following. I would start the damage phase with Still Hunt with the big shot, Cade's Retribution, shoot it, swap to our SMG, because remember, we have to apply strand damage, so I would shoot my SMG, and then finally, I would switch to Heathens, shoot my 2 rocket shots, then get off my smoke and nade, and then immediately swap back to Still Hunt. Now, instead of shooting 6 shots of Still Hunt here, I would shoot 3 shots, then swap to my SMG, which would proc Envious Arsenal, swap back to Heathens, shoot another 2 shots, smoke nade, then go back to Still Hunt again, shoot another 3 shots, but don't pop Cade's Retribution, go back to the SMG to proc Arsenal again, go back to Heathens, shoot another 2 shots, smoke nade, back to Still Hunt. And it's at this point where I would pop Cade's Retribution, shoot it off, go to my SMG, proc Arsenal, go back to Heathens, shoot another 2 rocket shots, smoke nade, and then go back to Still Hunt to repeat the process. Finally, we're closing out with armor mods, but to be completely honest, nothing here is too crazy, and it's all pretty self-explanatory, so I'm not going to stay on this for too long. We have our Siphon mod for my SMG to make ores. We have Dexterity mods for Solar and Strand for my weapons again. We have 2 Solar Reserves to maximize the ammo of Heathens and Still Hunt. We have Solar Weapon Surge to boost those weapons, and then 1 holster. This specifically is the one thing to mention here. This is how you're not going to be manually reloading during your damage phases, as you're using Still Hunt and Heathens and swapping between them and the SMG. Holster will proc, giving you back ammo, specifically into Still Hunt, so you don't have to reload that, and obviously Heathens has Envious Arsenal. And lastly, we have 3 copies of Time Dilation to extend the timer of our surges, so we have it for things like the Witness or the Corrupted Puppeteer through the whole phase. Anyway, if you want to try out the build on your own, I will have a dim link down below in the description, and while you're down there, you can also follow all my other socials, Twitch, Twitter, TikTok, yada yada, all that good stuff. In the meantime, if you did enjoy the video, please consider subscribing today. It does help the channel grow and is much appreciated. And if you want to go the extra mile, you can leave a like and or comment below as well. If you don't know what to leave as a comment, you can leave Heathens Vengeance as the comment. Thanks for watching. Catch you next time.